man, Thatch the Great, checking in once again. Let's get straight to it, shall we? Today, man, I wanted to talk to y'all about an old adage that a lot of people say, but something that I feel is just grossly untrue and something that I'm tired of hearing. Have y'all ever heard that saying that people like to use where they say that comparison is the thief of all joy? I truly, personally feel that that's absolute bullshit. And I think that it is an extremely lazy, pessimistic approach that a lot of people take to life. They don't like having to compare themselves to others because they like to be able to live in their own little bubble, right? Nobody wants to have to deal with the facts about themselves. Nobody wants to have to deal with the fact that they are possibly living an extremely mediocre, lackluster life. That's what it ultimately comes down to. People don't want to be real with themselves. And that in itself is a problem. I mean, just think about it. Especially when it comes to especially when it comes to this experience as a man in society. Being a man is a very difficult thing. We don't get anybody feeling sorry for us. Nobody is going to break out a violin and play us soft music to help us help us cope with the fact that our lives are not the way that we intended them to be. Nobody's going to feel sorry for us. We absolutely have to keep our heads down, put in the work, develop ourselves, and do anything that's necessary to make ourselves the best version of ourselves, right? So when I hear someone say, oh, you shouldn't compare yourself to other men, or, comparison is the thief of all joy, that's absolute bullshit. Let me explain why. If you do not compare yourself to other men, if you do not compare yourself to other men around you in your ecosystem, in your environment, at your job, in your social settings, if you do not compare yourself to all these other men, then how the hell do you know where you actually stack up in the pecking order? How do you actually know where you're actually at in life? You have to compare yourself. You have to compare yourself to other men. If you're not comparing yourself, then how do you actually know who is at the top of the hierarchy? There is no other way other than to compare. You know why? Because comparison is at the very root of competition. You cannot compete if you are not comparing yourself to those around you, to other men around you. How the hell can you actually compete at anything in life if you are not constantly making comparisons and also making those necessary adjustments to see how you measure up to the other men in society? You have to. You have to compare yourself. I don't really see any way around it personally, right? Because, like I said earlier, comparison is at the very root of any competition. At the very root of any competition, there is someone who has to compare himself to their counterparts, to their adversaries, to other men, and their, like I said, in their ecosystem. It only makes sense, right? If you are too cowardly to compare yourself to other men, then that simply means that you are not willing nor ready to compete for whatever it is that you are trying to obtain in society. I would hope that anybody who's watching this video right now can relate to that, right? If you are in, let's just use it in the context of the workplace, right? There's a ton of other people around me, but people who have that mentality that comparison is the thief of all joy, they will never be able to actually lock in, look at what's going on around them, see what the metrics are, who's the top performers, what are they doing in order to be so damn good at what they're doing. If you're not comparing yourself to those around you, then how the hell do you actually expect to make it to the top? How do you expect to actually become a better version of yourself? It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. You have to be willing to lock in, engage, and compare yourself to those around you that you respect, right? As a man, as we all can thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. As a man, this is an extremely difficult experience, right? We go through life. We don't have any manual that tells us how to be the best versions of ourselves as men. Of course, we have fathers. Well, those of us who are fortunate have fathers, right? I have a father. That's the initial person who gives you that framework on how to be a man. My dad. He's the initial framework, right? So other than that, though, when we go out there into the world and we have to actually fend for ourselves as men, how else do we know if we're doing a good job or not? How else do we know if we're actually putting in the work necessary to get all of the things in life that we truly do desire to have and that we want? There's no other way to do it than to compare yourself. Life is a competition. Life is a competition, and that's the thing that a lot of men hate to actually have to deal with. Nobody wants to actually face the music about the fact that life is a never-ending competition. When it comes to the women you want, there's a competition. When it comes to that level of money that you hope to obtain, it's competition. When it comes to being able to attract, the social circle that you hope to be around so that you can continue to level up time and time again, it's competition. Everything in life revolves around competition. And if you are not actually comparing yourself to those around you who are possibly doing better than you, how the fuck do you expect to actually level up? How the fuck do you expect to actually continue ascending in that overall hierarchy of life if you're not willing to compare yourself? Because you have to compare yourself to be able to compete at the highest level. You don't think that LeBron James has compared himself time and time again to his adversaries? Absolutely. And even though Michael Jordan would never admit this, you don't think that he was absolutely comparing himself to Clyde Drexler back in the day when they were locking heads in the playoffs? Absolutely. Of course, he realized that he was far better than Clyde Drexler, but at the same time, I guarantee you Michael Jordan compared himself to all of his worthy adversaries. The GPs, the Magic Johnsons of the world. He was comparing himself to other top guards. You have to compare yourself in order to truly reach your final form, so to speak, and become the best version of yourself as a man. You have to be able to study others. You have to be able to study their nuances. What makes them so damn good at what they're doing? If maybe they have certain qualities that you don't have that you can work on to better yourself. You have to make these assessments. And if you're not actually a student of the game, so to speak, when it comes to life as a whole, there's a lot of valuable keys and gems that you can miss if you're so self-absorbed and so lazy that you don't actually want to put in the work to be better. That's the thing. If you don't take anything else from this, that's what I want you to take from this. In order to truly compete in any ecosystem, any environment, any setting, you have to be willing to compare yourself to others, to those around you who are at your level or possibly doing even better. And if you're doing better than me, I'm going to study every fucking thing about you. That's just the way I'm wired. I'm going to study every single nuance. Because I'm going to take this from that, I'm going to take this piece from this person, and I'm going to work on those things myself so that I can keep leveling up and be the absolute optimal version of myself. I want to be the absolute best version of me. There's no way to do that other than to compare myself to others. I have to compare myself so that I can compete at the highest levels. That definitely applies to work. That applies to the dating world. It applies to, how my body looks when it comes to fitness. It applies to every single aspect of life as a man. And if you haven't realized that thus far, please take heed from what I'm telling you now. It absolutely applies in all aspects of life. That's all I wanted to say, guys. So when you hear that bullshit that people like to say about comparison being the thief of all joy, I want you to know that that is absolutely the biggest pile of bullshit that has ever been spoken. Comparison is not the thief of all joy. Comparison is at the very root of competition. It is necessary. It is healthy. You have to look at what others are doing right and also what they are doing wrong so that you can avoid those pitfalls. You have to compare yourself to others so that you can compete and so that you can become the absolute optimal version of yourself. Simple as that. And that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I just wanted to keep it short and sweet today, but this was on my mind, so I just wanted to speak on it real quick, all right? I appreciate y'all watching, and I'm about to head out, all right? This is your man, Thatch the Great. I'll holla. Peace.